Hello. I'll never be able to say hello, everybody, again.
Just say hi.
Hi. Are you high?
Greetings.
Hey, guys.
There you go. That works. Greetings and salutations, everyone.
Greetings and salutations, fellow friends. Hello, this is Grant, Daryl, and Cynthia. This is Incubate This in podcast partnership with the Raika Show. And we're working on Cynthia's greetings. I'll probably never be able to say hello without it sounding really bizarre ever again in my life. Maybe just not on camera. I don't know. Oh, we're not even on camera, on tape. It's not tape, it's computer, whatever. So today we thought we would spend a little time talking about, we work with a lot of entrepreneurs. What people forget is we are entrepreneurs.
Yep.
The whole idea of building an incubator around helping people test their products, test their ideas in the market, and then get those products to market and have them be profitable businesses, making money at whatever level is possible. That is in itself a business. And it has its own set of challenges and its ups and its downs. But at the heart of it, we are also entrepreneurs having an entrepreneurial experience. And so we thought it would be kind of interesting
that's what she said.
Yeah, that's what she said.
This is going to be a day of that, I can tell.
We thought it would be really interesting given that each of us has different backgrounds and experiences with having built businesses before or not. For Grant, I think this is the first time you've ever gone out on your own, right?
No, the beginning of the century.
Okay.
During the .com crash, I was with somebody for a couple of years. I contracted myself for a year and then we partnered up.
Okay. So you have done this once before.
There was no business to it really. It was just, we knew some people who needed work done and we did a couple jobs for people that we knew.
Needed some work done.
Yeah. We didn't do any marketing or advertising.
You had a product though.
Yeah, we did a product. We just we hired a big marketer for that. We spent money on that. And that was a case where, and I'm only bring it up because it happens to a lot of people of it's still not ready to put out there.
Yeah.
And every single day my partner felt that we needed to add something to it or change something before we put it out there in front of everybody. And I'll just mention this was in 2002 and we had Ajax in our JavaScript.
Yeah.
And when we showed people how that worked, that was just a little tiny part of
Nobody knew what Ajax hadn't even been coined as a term.
That was 2 years before. But on Internet Explorer, they had the XML HTTP request object. And we said, what the F is that? And started working with it. And so we were doing things like, click this thing here and the table updates with the new data without refreshing the page. And we were at the Rocky Mountain Internet Users Groups meetings showing some of that to a couple developers and their jaws just dropped open. That we weren't reloading the page to change the data on the page. And unfortunately, that was only about 20% of what our product was. Our product was really an XML programming language for websites. And we didn't think anything of that Ajax stuff. We didn't think that was that big of a deal. Come to find, of course, it took over web development and it'd have been a big star talking at conferences if we had gotten our product out in front of people at the time because it had Ajax in 2002.
Yeah. And a part of the reason it sounds like you're Grant's crying.
It would be called Grant Jax now.
He's
Grant Jax.
Grant Jax.
Hey, Grant.
He's sobbing into his microphone. Careful, because there is electricity running into your microphone there. So don't get too many tears on it. You'll electrocute yourself. But it sounds like you're saying that one of the reasons why maybe you didn't have as much success as you could have is something that we see with a lot of our entrepreneurs, which is almost like analysis paralysis, or I can't put it out till it's perfect. It's never good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would imagine that's because I had the same experience.
Talk about yours later. Yeah, talk about your experience.
We were coming out with this was when Android didn't really have an app store.
Yeah,
Google kind of had something, but not nearly like what they have now.
Yeah.
So we came out. We said, hey, why doesn't Android have an app store like Apple has an app store?
Yeah.
Where it's refined, where we're checking these apps for viruses and that sort of thing. And then, we did the same thing. It's got to be perfect. It's got to have this feature. It's got to have that feature. And then one day, I'll never forget, me and the family are going to like Texas Roadhouse, and my partner sends me this text, and it's Amazon as starting their own app store. And we're like, that's it. We're done.
Yeah.
We took too long.
Yeah.
And we pivoted a little bit, but it just, and other things happened. Life just got in the way, but mostly for me. But would we have been successful had we went ahead and put it out? I don't know.
Who knows?
But
it never got out there.
It never got out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. So Grant, you were involved with something one time in the past. You've done this, Daryl, twice? This is your third time kind of trying to strike out, or?
I mean, I've dipped my toe many times.
Okay.
But there's Be Nimble too.
Yeah.
Like that. I've done a lot of side efforts with people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've dipped my toe. I kind of had my own consultancy during the .com bust.
Okay.
Which brought me out here.
Yeah.
But earnestly like this, probably twice.
Okay. So I would argue there are a lot of developers, programmers like us who strike out on their own. And a lot of them are doing just like consulting for an hourly wage or whatever. But some of these guys have ideas for tech products. And I would posit that the thing that's missing is they don't know how to run a business.
Yeah.
Like they don't actually, they can probably build decent software. I mean, even decent software can make money. Crappy software sometimes can make money. We've seen that too. But they don't really know, they don't understand. I'm gonna put it the way that it was painted to Grant a few weeks ago. We had a woman reach out to us who had this idea for a thing that she thinks is missing in her industry. And when Grant was trying to explain to her, like, we need to do the reason we do our startup program before we build an MVP and, spend a bunch of time and money is because we need to understand the user. And she was like, this is going to be huge. It'll sell itself. This is that same mentality of, if I build an app and put it on the App Store, I'm going to be a millionaire.
Right. People
forget that if nobody knows your app is there, if nobody knows your product's on the web, it's not like the web is, I don't even know. Like, I can't even come. I mean, look at a grocery store. When you walk into a grocery store and you go to the pasta sauce aisle, I mean, it's almost a whole aisle.
Yeah.
How does one thing stand out from another?
Yeah.
It comes down to the packaging and whether or not you've heard about it somewhere else and you're looking for it. You will not notice 90% of the brands of pasta sauce available because you're looking for the one that you've seen on TV and heard on the radio a gazillion times.
And how many people do that? They get to that aisle and they go, Ragu, I've heard of that. That's a good
exactly.
brand.
Okay, that's
good. I know there's a whole bunch of brands, but I would recognize them instantly as soon as I saw them. Prego.
Yeah.
Ragu's the one that sticks because it's the one that actually was used sometimes in childhood.
Yeah. Is it any good? I don't know. It tasted good when I was a kid. I'll get it now.
It's cream tomatoes. I mean,
right.
So
you use a lot of cheese.
That's right. So what's interesting about, and we'll talk a little bit more about our journey as an entrepreneur, but what's interesting is having a skill in a particular industry or having knowledge of something in a particular industry might give you great ideas, and it might even get you to the point where you have a product available in the market to sell. Doesn't mean people are seeing it or buying it.
Right.
And I think that's a distinction that a lot of technology people, they're like, oh, I have this idea and I have the skills to build it. Let me go build it. And then you're like sitting there like, why isn't anybody coming to my website? Why isn't,
Because they didn't document it.
Yeah, because they didn't write documentation. So, we did a series about getting to know all of us. And so if you're curious about why each of us was interested in sort of making this leap and at what could be considered the height of our careers and our earning potential, we were like, let's go out on our own because it sounds really great.
Let's make a fraction of what we were making before.
Yeah, this seems like the perfect time to go broke. But what may or may not be obvious is that for the clients who come on board with us, they get it almost instantly. They get why we do what we do. And specifically, I'm talking about why do we do something like our startup program before we ever develop software for someone? And it's because we don't want people wasting their money. Mm-hmm. Whether it's because, they spend money on something they don't really understand. Do you really understand the problem you're trying to solve? That's the most important part of any project, any business that you're taking on, regardless of whether it's tech related or not. You're saying there's a problem, there's a hole, there's a problem. I want to fill it.
That's what she said.
Oh, man. And I think I understand how to solve that problem really, really well because I've experienced that problem, right? So usually it comes out of some pain that we experience or that we are close to in some way, right? So the first piece is understanding the problem. The second piece is how much do people who also have the problem, if I understand the problem well now, how much do they resonate with what I'm proposing to solve it? Having all of that information may dramatically change what you thought you needed to build or how you thought you needed to structure a business or what your solution really looks like. And if you went right to building something from your first understanding and not getting the rest of that foundation of knowledge, you are going to spend more money because you were wrong or you didn't actually have enough of a market. So why am I saying this? I'm saying it because we had this problem. So when we started out, it was like April of 2017, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And, we all got together and we were like, man, we want to do something. I probably have the most business side experience. These guys are far more technically capable than I am. And we said, okay, we could create something. Like, what would we want to do? I had the idea for a long time that I've built enough businesses in my career, whether for myself or for other people or working with other companies to fix their businesses, whatever that was. I've built a lot of businesses. And I was like, wouldn't it be interesting to run an incubator? Like, and we'll do it hedge fund style where we have this long-term strategy of, we take a small percentage in all the businesses that we help in exchange. We get some equity, we charge them less cash up front. And over the next 5 to 10 years, we'll build a hedge fund that will be a little bit of a bunch of businesses making us money, whether we're working or not.
I just wanted to open a bar on the beach in Mexico.
That is looking better and better to me every day. And this sounded like a brilliant plan, right? And so what did we do in typical developer fashion? We're like, we can totally do this. Like all it is our time, right? So we got a couple projects. We dove right into building them. We charged almost no cash up front. I think the very, very first project we started, we didn't even charge them cash, which we found out was a huge mistake because they had nothing invested.
Yep.
We were way more invested than they were. And it showed up very quickly in terms of almost no sales. They do nothing with it now. It's been 2.5 years. And there's almost nothing happening with it, which is a huge shame. The very first client that we did charge some up front, he's one of our biggest successes. That's PubTech. We talk about him all the time. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not saying that his success is directly correlate to the fact that he spent money, but the fact that he was willing to spend money to get into our incubator was a much better indicator of his willingness to spend money in other places where he needed to in order to be successful.
It's one of many signals that we've learned.
Yes.
And are continuing to learn to identify that this person is in it for the long haul.
They're in it. Yeah, they're in it. So for the first 1.5 years, we just were like building projects. Like when they would come along, we would all talk about them. And we'd say, yeah, this seems pretty cool. And this diversifies our portfolio, but it's still in an area of tech that we feel like we can be successful. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And about a year and a half in, it was about a year ago this time.
Almost
a year ago. It was November of 2018. We were like, we don't make any money. and it's because our initial strategy is a long-term strategy. That's what a hedge fund is. It's a long-term strategy. We have short-term cash flow needs. Like we have to pay rent.
Yeah.
And we have to, we got to put gas in our cars. Like we paid ourselves almost nothing for the first 2 years, right? It was almost 2 years. So we learned the same lesson that a lot of people are learning. Now, why were we able to get over that sort of like hump of figuring out how do we make money in the short term while we make money in the long term? The reason why is because we had a couple projects early on that had some success and early on that had some failure. Like we had one that was a total bust and one that is doing really, really well. And so we had something to compare it to, right? So this is how our startup program came to be, because we realized if we had been able to do this in our own business from the beginning and look and see how would we find successful projects or not successful projects, we would have done it. If somebody had said to us, but how will you know which projects are going to be successful? We would have been like, oh, we probably need some criteria.
Right.
But nobody said that. It seemed like such a great idea. And we looked at companies like Techstars and Boomtown and Innosphere and even Y Combinator. And we were like, look, they're successful working with early stage companies. We just didn't realize that they have a whole bunch of criteria. Yeah. So I'm curious, you guys, what's been your experience over the last 2.5, almost 3 years, getting to the place where we are, where we finally actually know what our ideal client looks like? We understand the process of how do we find those people and sell to them? How do we close those deals? And we're just hitting that point where we're getting enough referrals, sources, and things like that, where we're starting to actually make a living doing it. Like, what's been your experience? Start with the ups and downs, right? Because those are huge. And I know that Grant, you experienced the down probably more. And just in the last few weeks, we've had some wins. And you've been on sort of the upswing, and it's palpable. You can feel it. Every time we walk into the office together, I get energized and excited.
Yeah.
Right? Why is that? Like, nothing's actually changed yet. So why is it?
There's a sense that it is changing, I think. We're getting interest. We are closing some more deals. We just closed one on Friday, right?
Yeah.
So I think we had this theory, and it took a little refinement over the past probably 9 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Plus or minus.
Yeah.
And now it seems like it's starting to play out.
Yeah.
It's like they always say, it just takes some patience. You just got to keep going, because when you're at that down period, you're like, is this ever, we said that, how many times have we said, is this ever going to work?
Yes.
We've said it to each other. We said it to our marketing firm, other people, it's just, and, thankfully a lot of those people were very encouraging, and they said, just keep going, keep making little refinements here and there, which we will continue to do. We do continue to make those refinements, but I think that's what that electricity in the air. I mean, Friday, I walked past Buzz, a guy here in the office, and he was like, what's going on? You guys are just suddenly, there's people in and out.
Yeah.
He's like, who are these people? I'm like, I don't know. We're going to find out though.
But it's distinct from, one of the biggest pieces of advice I often find myself giving to our entrepreneurs is you have to keep going. Yeah. I mean, that is one of the defining successful people. They keep going. People who stop, there's no way to be successful if you stop, right?
Yeah.
How do you get through the downs? Like, what keeps you going?
What's interesting, I've noticed with us, especially since there's 3 of us, at any given point, there could be one of us that's down and another one of us is always up at that point. We do a really good job of balancing each other in that way. And the other person is like, okay, I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. It's pretty rare
that all three of us are like doom and gloom.
I don't know that there's ever been a time when it's all three of us.
There has either.
Maybe 2 out of the 3.
Yeah.
And I guess the 2 of us will draw some inspiration, some energy off of that third person.
Yeah.
But so there's an argument for having co-founders.
Yeah.
And I can understand how difficult it could be doing it solo.
Building a solid team around you as quickly as you can.
Yes.
And I think one of the things that's useful for us, and I live with David. I have a different kind of relationship with him than I hope the 2 of you have.
I can assure you.
But the thing about David is he believes in us.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, originally he believed in me.
Yeah, he's a great cheerleader for us.
Yeah, originally he believed in me. That's what had him. He is our other investor, our sort of silent partner in the company. But after having worked with you guys and seen what you're able to produce and seen how you operate and the integrity with which you bring to the effort, he's drunk Kool-Aid. Like he is oftentimes that third party observer who can come in and be like, hey guys, but remember all these places that you've been and how far you've come, and it's just around the corner. Like, keep the faith, right? And so I don't know about you guys, but for me, oftentimes that's exactly what I need.
Yeah.
And he's always right there with it. So I think having people like that around you makes a difference.
But I think the distinction is he's not telling us what we want to hear. He's not just being a cheerleader. I mean, it's genuine.
Yeah.
I think that's really important because, I feel like everybody in their lives, and I'm sure we have it too, have people in our circle who are telling us not disingenuinely at all. They're telling, but they are kind of telling us what we want to hear.
Yeah, because
in fact,
they want to make you happy.
In mind some people, and that's fine. I'm not faulting them, but you have to recognize that and make sure you pay attention to the ones who are genuine.
Right. The ones who see the vision.
Yes.
And they're almost, holding it out there for you when you can't hold it for yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think any one of us could say that there hasn't been a point when we have either on our own or with each other sat back and gone, I mean, are we crazy?
Yeah.
Are we crazy? I think it would
That's
be
just part of the
I think it would be disingenuous to pretend like we're not. We haven't thought
we're not
that.
Crazy.
No, yeah. We may be crazy. I mean, we may very well be, but that doesn't mean this can't work.
Right.
And I think that's what we're finally starting to see.
I may be crazy.
But I just may be the lunatic you're looking for. So you're awful quiet over there, Grant. What do you think about this?
It's very hard for me to self-reflect over a long term. If I'm feeling overwhelmed, which I have for a while now, from amount of work, and feeling like I'm not contributing in places that I normally would or could or should. You talked about Davey, you talk about it's having the other perspectives. That's what it takes to reassure one is or isn't crazy, or to what degree one is being optimistic or pessimistic or crazy about something or unrealistic.
Yeah.
Really, that's the thing, is you get thoughts and I get feelings and thoughts, and I don't know how realistic they are because they're feelings. And so, when you can talk to somebody else, somebody who's a supportive person for you normally, and talk to them about what's going on, it reassures you that I'm not crazy. This is what other people have gone through.
Yeah.
To get there. And, like you were saying about sticking with it, I mean, that so many of these important things seem to boil down to these bizarrely simple, profundities. Thinking about the book, Think and Grow Rich, some of the statements where you look at that's too simplistic. And then you look at it and it's like, how, if you quit, you can't win. You can't possibly win if you quit the path, the journey.
Yeah.
And it's just that people are worried that they might spend a lot of resources going down the wrong path.
Right.
And so they pat themselves on the back because they cut that journey short. But I think that there's a difference. I think people are willing to cut that journey short faster than before the evidence has mounted that says this is the wrong path.
Right.
And I think that there's sort of a little perverse human pleasure that we get out of, like I said, if I stopped, I worked on this business for a year or two, and then I stopped, and I pat myself on the back because, I was using up all our savings, et cetera, and I called off that unrealistic thing. It sort of reminds me of, we have a human tendency to predict the worst outcomes or bad outcomes.
Right.
Right. They fumbled again. They're going to blow the whole game.
Yeah.
How do I know? That's 3 hours away.
Yeah.
But I mean, everybody identifies with that. We know what that's like. And there's something weird about it. Like, well, then at least where we won't be let down.
Right.
Then at least we were prepared for the negative outcome.
Right.
And we sort of congratulate ourselves somehow on, it's going to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But why do we do that? Right? I mean, it's weird because it's just really it's a negative way of looking at the future.
Yeah. One thing that I'm thinking about as you're talking, that what you're saying is reminding me that we went a long time without ever saying what our goals were. I mean, literally, this was like 2 months ago. We were like, we don't have milestones. We don't know what we're trying to hit. We don't know. We don't even have like conditions of satisfaction laid out for ourselves to be able to say, where are we in relationship to what we said we wanted to do and by when, right? And how often do people set out on a journey and it becomes a slog because you don't have anything to measure yourself by, right? You're like, we're just going to keep doing this until
we either wear out or it pays off.
Or it pays off, yeah. And it's like...
But we're not saying when we're going to look and say, if the tank reaches a quarter empty, we're turning around.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you know the difference between slogging and small wins if you don't have that mapped out, right? And
if you haven't set that out ahead of time in some fashion or have something a little specific in mind,
how do you know?
You're going to be going at your whim.
Yeah.
If you have a really bad day, bad things happen. It's like, this business has just been sucking the life out of me and it's never going to get anywhere. I'm giving up. Exactly. Because it was a bad day.
Exactly.
So I read this book earlier in the year. I recommend it to everyone. It's called Can't Hurt Me by David Goggins. And he's ex-Navy SEAL. He now runs these ultra marathons, 100 miles. And one of the concepts that he has as far as running goes that he applies to life, and I don't remember, backstops. He calls them backstops.
Okay.
And he says, at any given point in the race, I check in periodically on my backstops. So I know 2 hours in, I should be here. If I'm not here, then what do I need to do to get here?
To step it up. Yeah.
I'm going to have to step it up. Yep. Otherwise I'm not going to, because then that just falls, I'm going to miss all the other backstops behind that.
Yep.
But a key piece of that, I feel like, is almost stopping for a second in this race, stop running, stop and look around. Where am I?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in our situation, this race of this business, stopping for a second, poking our heads up and going, where are we? Mm-hmm. And a little bit of looking back and going, look what we've actually achieved.
Right.
It may not seem like a lot,
right,
but we've actually built a lot.
A lot. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because how often...
people sure are looking at my LinkedIn profile these days.
How often are people setting out and the only milestone they have that they're working towards is the acquisition or that big sale or that, I need to have $20 million in the bank. Like, there's so much that happens between here and there that is an indicator, like you say, of, am I on track for that? Am I behind? Am I ahead? Do I have a little bit more leeway to maybe try some stuff out and take a little bit more risk because I'm ahead?
Yeah.
And if you have no relationship to where you are in the larger goal, whatever that might be, how do you know if you're doing the right things or not? How do you know when you need to course correct? And for us, that was sort of like, it hit me. Grant said this thing, this was probably like 6 months ago or 8 months ago. We do our monthly sort of board meetings, or if you will, where we all get together and here's the state of the union and here's what we're working on and here's
it's the all hands meeting.
It's the all hands, all six, sometimes 8 if David shows up. And he, I was sort of like talking through all these different strategies and stuff. And he goes, whoa. He's like, Cynthia, you're like already out of the plane and I don't even have my parachute on yet. And I'm like, I'm not there. And he was right, because in my mind, I was already 12 or 15 steps ahead and leaving my business partners behind in the dust and not recognizing that they may have different conditions of satisfaction to keep going than I do.
I just saw a tumbleweed blow by.
Yeah.
Us by into the dust. Yeah, that.
And so we got to the point where we sat down and said, okay, guys, in order for you to feel like you can keep playing the game we're playing, what do you need?
Mm-hmm.
And when do you need it by? And now we actually...
Unlimited pork rinds.
Oh my God. Hey, if that's all it is, done. Like done.
As a resident keto specialist here, I can get on board with that.
So what's happened is now I can look at our sales and marketing efforts. I can look at the deals that are in our pipeline and what we're closing and how long it's taking those to close. And I can say, do we need to add something else? Are we going to hit the conditions of satisfaction that we have said, this is how we know we're winning or not? I know very clearly whether or not we're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so if it comes to a point where somebody says, it's not enough wins for me, nobody will be surprised by that, right? Like, how many times have we heard stories of, I just talked to a woman like 2 weeks ago who's had 3 different technical co-founders in the time that she's been working on what she's working on. And I'm like, why is that? Well, because she has a different set of conditions of satisfaction that keep her going, and they aren't on board with that same set of conditions of satisfaction. And she hasn't been related to, what does it take to satisfy these people? And what do I need to do to make sure that they're getting what they need so that they want to continue to go on the journey with me?
Because having different definitions is okay.
Yeah,
I think all 3 of our definitions are probably slightly different at least. It's just that being aware of it together and knowing how, okay, now I know this is what you need and this is what you need and this is what I need. So let's figure out how to meet
How
those.
do we meet that? Exactly. Yeah. Exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So it's interesting that we have not been immune in our own business. I do a startup therapy couch video every week. It's usually 2 minutes or less. I try and keep them under a minute. Sometimes that's getting harder because the nuggets of wisdom take
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Grant has been watching The Office, if you can't tell.
He's Grant. Grant has gone bye-bye. What have you got left, Daryl? But the purpose of those nuggets, if you watch them, you will see our journey as much as our entrepreneurs' journeys.
Yep.
And I think it would be disingenuous of us to say we can help you build a successful business if we haven't gone through the ups and downs. If all we ever had was success from the beginning and we never went through the struggle to get to the place where we're like, oh, we understand the struggle, how would anybody trust us? How would anybody relate to us as we have been there? Trust us. You can't. It's like, I'm going to use this example. I know people are going to complain. That's fine. I don't trust Oprah. Every time she comes out with a weight loss thing, I'm like, yeah, I'm not buying. I don't believe it because you've never been thin. Now, maybe she's felt good for herself and that's great for her. She has not met my condition of satisfaction for my body outwardly. So I don't trust it. I'm not going there. I'm sorry. I don't buy.
Well, and that's a good analogy too, because it's a little hard to relate to a billionaire woman, right? Who's been in business for almost 40 years versus, someone who's just getting started.
I'm talking about from a weight loss perspective.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But that's what I'm saying.
Well, yeah,
you know?
I see what you're saying. I see what you're saying.
Like the Grateful Dead rehab center?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I mean, it's like but it is like a rehab center like Betty Ford or some of these that all the stars go to, and they keep falling off the damn wagon. And you're like, okay,
why
that
would
makes
I want that? Why would I want that?
I mean, in that case, it's kind of like, well, the program only works if you work the program, right? But you still kind of start to question, like, does it really work for everybody though? You know, I mean, and so it would be the equivalent of getting a business coach who's never had a successful business.
Yeah. Well, think about all of the life coaches out there.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not knocking Anthony Robbins, but I've heard Joe Rogan say, he's like, you know, what has Anthony Robbins gone through to be able to talk about these things? I'm not saying he hasn't.
Right.
It is more of, he doesn't seem to talk about those things that he's gone through, and yet he's doling out this advice. My guess is because he seems to be very effective, and he seems to know what he's talking about.
He used to talk about that stuff, washing his dishes in the bathtub.
Okay. Well, that's good. I think the overall average perception is that he doesn't talk about it, because that was my perception, and Joe Rogan's as well. And so you have that in the back of your head of, why should I listen to this guy? Has he gone through what I'm going through?
So
I think he has.
I went to a session. Denver Startup Week was the middle of September. I went to a session that was about emotional intelligence, and it was a topic that was, you know, proposed and put on by this guy. I think he was a designer. He kept saying he was a creative, and I didn't really understand. Does he mean that in terms of like he's a designer, like a graphic designer? Was that what he's talking about? I don't know. But what was interesting is he started the session by saying why, you know, talking about his credentials and whatever. And he was like, well, why am I talking about emotional intelligence? Why am I qualified to talk about this? Like, why did I take on this topic? And he said, he puts up a picture of himself as a 4-year-old kid standing in front of a Christmas tree. And he said, this was me at 4 years old. And I wasn't a very happy child. I had a lot of trauma in my childhood. And then he went right into the talk. So immediately he had a chance to make it relatable to us, to have everybody in the audience who had something traumatic or wasn't happy as a child or whatever relate to him so that they could understand the principles he was saying he got out of having that childhood experience. But he didn't tell it. I had a traumatic childhood. Just trust me on that.
Yeah.
They took my phone away for a whole month.
Yeah, exactly. And what
Come on, Trotz, give me some samples. Come on.
What I found was interesting is then every time he made a generalization. So one of the generalizations he made was that all CEOs manage from the top down. I don't. I am not that way.
Yeah.
I am the bottom feeder in every managerial type role that I take on. I do the worst jobs. I make sure that people have everything they need. I have the hardest conversations with people. Like, I manage bottom up. But he made a generalization, and because I couldn't relate to where he got that, I was immediately turned off.
Yeah.
Can you stop listening as much? And
I stopped listening as much. So then
listen with a critical ear.
So then the next thing I heard him say was he was talking about emotional intelligence and some facets of this, and how few people in the general population are actually able to name their feelings when they have them, which is true.
It is true.
It's very true. You know what? I'm a recovering disordered eater. One of the very first things they teach you to do is how to name your feelings so that you don't eat them. The very next statement I heard him make after he was talking about how people have a difficult time naming their feelings, no CEO can do it.
And yet here you are in the audience.
And I'm like...
And you're thinking, well, the feeling I'm feeling right now is pissed off.
Exactly. I'm feeling pretty pissed and pretty frustrated and pretty like, you are a liar.
Yeah.
Not that he was a liar, but he never set up the things so that I felt like I was on the journey with him and I could forgive the generalization.
Right. That's what I was just about to say. It was like you make some blanket statements that in some scenarios, in some contexts, okay, well, that part's not true for me. That's fine.
Yeah.
Or
I'm the holdout.
If you haven't gotten me there, and it's like, you're full of shit.
Yeah, exactly.
You're full of it. You're full of it. That's not true for me. That's not true for me.
Exactly. And I ended up walking out about 15 minutes in because I was like, this is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
So all that to say, when you can relate to, our William Lepesco, who's the CEO of PupTech, who we've been working with for almost 2 years now, a little over 2 years now. He's gone through the ups and the downs.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew he could call me because I've been there.
We've seen him go through the ups and downs. We've seen him really frustrated, and we explain that this is whatever. And then, he's still frustrated, but he's kind of come down a little bit. And then the next day he's fine.
And there's times where, he's in a mad rush to fundraise to keep up with the money that he needs to be spending in order to put out the product. And the struggle of that and the frustration and the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And he'll call me because he knows I get it.
Yeah.
He knows I get it. He knows all three of us get it because we have been in that, how do we make ends meet and get over the hump of, it's now everything's flowing and the deals are flowing and we have a dependable, reliable pipeline. Like, how do we get there? He knows that we have been there,
mm-hmm.
that we are still in some ways just sort of cresting over that hump right now, And so it would be much harder for him to feel like he could call me and have me be supportive and talk him through that or answer questions or just listen if I didn't understand what he was talking about. I was like, I don't know. You must be doing something wrong because we've never had cash flow problems.
Or more specifically, that he didn't believe that you knew.
Exactly.
Or if we just said, William, here's a picture of us at 4 years old and we had a traumatic childhood.
Exactly.
So
let's move on.
And you're a CEO, so I know you can't name your feelings.
That's right. And I know that, you shit all over all the people in your organization.
There's another bottom-up CEO, right? William has done every freaking job.
He has done every job, and he never takes for granted when people do those jobs well. Not one time have I ever seen him do it.
Right.
Not once. And he never relates like I'm the top of the pyramid and everybody. No, he's like, oh, that's going to fall. I'm over here. Oh, that's okay. He's like, I got it, guys. It's all good. It's all good.
Even things that, I
don't know if he can name his feelings because
I can't speak to that.
I mean, he is an engineer at heart. He was a civil and electrical engineer, but so he may not be able to name his feelings. I don't know, but.
Are you making a blanket generalization that engineers can't name their feelings?
Nope.
I call that one Sally.
Right.
This is George. I talk to George when I feel bad.
I'm not sure what that means, but.
All right. Well, this kind of took an interesting direction. I guess if we wanted to leave you with something, if you're an entrepreneur or you're thinking about being an entrepreneur, or maybe you've built businesses, maybe you haven't, everything that you're going through, anybody who has really been in building a business and who has put all of their effort and all of their time and all of their money, all pieces of themselves into trying to do that and do it well, they will get it. They will get it. And our journey has been exactly the same. And it's ironic because our business is about building businesses, but we've had all the same experience building the business of building businesses.
Yeah.
So,
it's Incubateception.
That's right. Incubateception.
It's meta. Is it metabait?
It's
no,
meta.
that just gets too weird.
No. Let's not go there. Metabater? And on that note, any last parting thoughts you guys want to leave anybody with?
Just
like
keep
that.
swimming.
Just keep swimming. What do we do with swimming? I love her. All right. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for coming along on our journey. And we empathize and sympathize with your journey wherever you are in it.
And your traumatic childhood.
We're right there with you. We also had a traumatic childhood. Just trust us. This has been Grant, Daryl, and Cynthia for Incubate This and podcast partnership with the Raika Show. And we will see you guys next time.